Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and I have another exciting headphone review for you today. But before we jump into that, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel. And if you are enjoying what I am doing and want to support me going forward, please be on the lookout for how you can continue to support me in other ways moving forward so that I can continue to bring you fun headphone reviews and speaker reviews and all of that kind of thing. All right, so a good one today. The ZMF Auteur. This particular ZMF Auteur is in silkwood. The stock wood is in ambrosia maple, according to the website right now. So here we go. I mean, just that beautiful ZMF craftsmanship on full display here. It is a gorgeous headphone. It is well made. ZMF pride of ownership is absolutely a thing because, I mean, just look at it. It's gorgeous. All right. Exquisite attention to detail, excellent craftsmanship, all of that stuff that we associate with ZMF. Good stuff. All right, specs on this thing. $1,600 for this starting price. Goes up from there depending on if you want different pad types, different cable types, etc. Okay, different wood types. There are several different woods that you can order here. Again, this one is the silk wood. Other important specs here, a 300 ohm impedance with a 97 decibel per milliwatt sensitivity, which makes it not necessarily an easy to drive load, but it's also not super hard to drive either. And in fact, in comparison to like a Focal Clear OG in particular, like I found when I compared the two, like I didn't have to adjust the potentiometers on my amps very much at all to get them to volume match. So even though it's higher impedance, it's fairly easy-ish to drive up there. Now, it also has a biocellulose driver in it, so it's, or at least that's the driver material, driver tech. It is basically the open-backed version of the Eikon from ZMF. They both have that biocellulose driver in it. Now, the driver is not made by Fostex. I'm pretty sure ZMF makes their own driver for this, but Fostex is another company that makes those biocellulose drivers, which Fostex calls them their biodynamic or biodynas. And they're different from ZMFs in that the Fostex tend to be very low impedance, usually around 25 ohms, where these are 300. But I have heard a couple of Fostex in biodynas too, and so that makes an interesting point of comparison with that similar driver tech. So we'll come back to that here in a little bit. Now, you can get any number of ZMF pads for this and change the sound signature. I unfortunately have only had this for a few days, which I listened to it very intently here for the past few days and did some very direct comparisons with 3 other headphones in a similar price range, which we'll get to as well. Yeah, it's sorry, lost my train of thought there, but we're gonna roll with it. You can get all kinds of different pads. This one has the ZMF Auteur hybrid micro perf pads on it, which are the stock version. All right, the cabling is dual entry mini 3-pin XLR, and I don't think that this cable is the stock cable. I think this one might cost a little extra, but in terms of headphone cables that come from the same company that makes the headphone, this cable here is like a flat ribbon type. Okay, and you can see 4 conductors running through there, but it's really nice. Like, it doesn't tangle very much and all of that. Okay, so again, we have the dual 3-pin mini XLR. This version is the 4-pin XLR balanced on the amp end, but as far as headphone cables that are made by the company that sells the headphone, like this one right here, is pretty good. Doesn't tangle much, lays nice and flat on the desk, doesn't get caught on a lot of things very often, so kudos to ZMF on that one. All right, there. Pretty good comfort here. Like, I mean, the build quality is just great ZMF stuff. Like, it's a high-quality build. The comfort is also very good. The pads are nice and soft, like all ZMF pads usually are nice and soft. All right, the mass of the silkwood material, the entire headphone mass with the silkwood, I think this one is about 480 grams, so it's a little heavy-ish, but really not that bad. And the clamp is well balanced and keeping it on your head, but not squeezing too tight. And, you know, you can wiggle your head back and forth, and they stay in place pretty well. You can look down and write something on your desk if you're using it while you're working, and it stays in place well. Right. So comfort-wise, I can wear it for a very long time. I didn't notice any hot spots or anything like that, so it's pretty comfortable and just, again, excellent overall build. Now let's talk about sound. I used my Chord Hugo 2 mobile DAC amp and to listen to this for a while, particularly during the acclimation phase where I just listened to this exclusively for several hours while doing some work with my Hugo 2 with a shuffle playlist that just covered all kinds of genres, okay, and that sounded really good. The Hugo 2 can be a little bit picky which headphones it likes, and it liked this one just fine and sounded really good on a wide variety of musical genres. On my desk, I used my Violectric HPA V281 headphone amp and the K and HA1A Mark II tube headphone amp with a Berkeley Audio Design Series 2 DAC. Okay, the sound signature here is neutral warm, and it's a bit mid-range focused, particularly like the lower half, maybe lower 3/4 of the mid-range frequencies tend to get of the mid-range range gets the most focus here. It is not mid-forward, it just the presentation is leading you into like drawing your attention into the mid-range more than the deep bass or the upper treble. Okay, in that way, it is reminiscent of the Sen HD 650. Now, I don't want to call this a more expensive version of the Sen HD 650, but its presentation style, at least in terms of signature and frequency response, reminds me of the HD 650 and that kind of neutral, warm, mid-range focus, particularly lower mid-range focus in the presentation. All right, the overall presentation is smooth and relaxed and highly listenable. And again, I think kind of going back to the comfort, like it's designed to just be comfortable and listenable in terms of its presentation for long periods of time. And I think it pulls that off well. Great mid-range timbre. Not just okay mid-range timbre, like really great mid-range timbre. It's as good as a mid-range timbre as you're going to find in this price point, and it might actually be the best at this price point. I have not heard every single model around $1,600, but I've heard a lot of them, and this one's mid-timbre is as good as any of them and better than most, okay? If not all. A true strength of this headphone. Voices sound like voices, pianos sound like pianos, acoustic guitars sound like acoustic guitars, it just on and on like that. You could just name all of that. Sounds really natural and listenable and believable on this one. Now, one of the reasons that it is a mid-range focused presentation, beyond that excellent timbre, is that the frequency extension is not super great in either direction. Now, the treble might extend up pretty high, but it also rolls off in its presence a little bit, so it doesn't sound dark. It definitely leads more to the warmth, but the treble, there's not as much treble energy up top as there are with other similarly priced headphones. Similarly with the bass extension is not poor, but with other similarly priced headphones, I could hear this one, like the grunt stopped at a higher frequency when other headphones in the price point kept having some more to give. Not even bass-focused headphones. Like I have with me the Focal Clear MG, the Clear OG. Got that one recently, and the LCDX 2021. And with both of those, which again are more neutral in terms of frequency presentation, had better bass extension than this one. And so I do need to quibble with ZMF's website a little bit, because on their page for this headphone, they claim that it has really excellent high and low treble extension. And I just can't endorse that claim, because there are multiple other headphone models that I've heard near this price that just do it better. I just named two, like the LCDX 2021 and the original Focal Clear. They are not bass monsters, they are not bass cannons, but they beat this in lower end extension. So I gotta quibble with ZMF and their language on their website there. You might want to work on that one. Now, maybe that's just the Silkwood, maybe that's just this unit. I don't know, but the evidence that I have suggests that claim is not true. Now, that said, the extension is not bad and it's not a deal breaker. I really only notice it when I'm doing direct comparisons and I'm like playing tracks like Mountains from Hans Zimmer, where you can hear the bass just extend and continue to like just dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and this one just bottoms out before those others do. But in most music, I don't really notice it much. All right, the spatial presentation is okay, doesn't really call attention to itself one way or the other, and I think that's also usually a good thing. It's similar in soundstage size to like the LCDX 2021 in that it's big-ish but not huge. Like, it's got some size to it. But again, like, it doesn't have a spatial presentation that reaches out and grabs you or that you notice in any particular direction. Imaging, like where sonic images sound like they're coming from within the soundstage, is pretty good. Separation is just okay. There's not as much or as clearly defined space between sonic images as there are with some other headphones around this price as well. Now, given that this is a more smooth and relaxed headphone, the next point surprised me a little bit in that there is a fair amount of mid-bass punch here. It's not going to hit like a Focal or a Fostex, but there is a little bit of noticeable pop and punch in the mid-bass here, which is a little bit different and a little bit kind of disjointed in a way because, like, snare drums, for example, on like the OG Clear or the LCDX 2021 or even my lot and modded Fostex here, TH900 lot and mod there, like snare drums just have a really quick, like snappy sound to them. Like they just snap real quick. It's tight on the decay and whatnot. And so there's like an element of physicality and macrodynamics to that quickness and speed that this doesn't have in those through that mid range, but it has in the mid bass, creating that kind of punch, which overall I like. I mean, I'm kind of a bass head. I like punchy bass, but it surprised me that it was here. Now again, it's not a lot. It's not going to be a punch you and slap you around kind of headphone like Focals or Fostexes are going to be, but it is there. All right. A slight treble shimmer. Okay. Now, I don't think that's really the fault of the Auteur because I've heard this. I've heard the Eikon, which is like the closeback model of this same driver. I have heard, again, my TH900 from Fostex, and then also like the THXOO series, all with those biocellulose drivers. And what I've noticed with all of them, so we're talking same driver material, but just made by different companies, all of them had like this shimmery timbral quality in the treble that not necessarily a frequency response peakiness. And it's not just connected to the treble presence, because highly present treble, rolled off treble, still there's this tonal quality that I think is just connected to the biocellulose material that just comes across to me as a little bit shimmery. And so this has that as well, which I don't find the most natural, but you may or may not like it. And then finally, I mentioned my tube amp here. The 300 ohm impedance, this sounded really good on my 1A Mark II tube amp. Not quite as clean or as detailed as on my HPA V281, which we shouldn't expect because the K tube is just under $1,000. The V281 was like a $2,500 or $2,800-ish unit, something like that when it was in its day. But still, it sounded really good on the 1A Mark II tube amp. So this becomes one of the fewer like middle $1,000 headphones out there that plays well with like mid-fi tube amps, which tend to need the higher impedances. So that could attract some people there. All right. So I think that sums up the sound for just this unit alone. Warm, smooth, relaxed, excellent, like class-leading mid-range timbre, a spatial presentation that is decent but not distracting in either direction, and just enough resolution to sound to keep things going and engaged, but like not aggressive resolution or anything like that. So let's talk about comparisons, because at $1,600 US, the market is just packed. It is busy at that price point. So let's look at like $1,200 to $1,800 units that are out there right now. And here's just a list of them from just the big name headphone companies. And even this probably isn't exhaustive. You have the Odyssey LCDX at $1,200. You have the Focal Radiance at $1,300. You have the Focal Clear, MG and OG, both $1,500 list. OG I've seen as low as like $1,000 now, I think, but it was a $1,500 headphone. You have ZMF's own Eikon at $1,600. You have the Hi-Fi Min Aria at $1,600. You've got Foztex's TH900 series, a few different models in there, around $1,600. You have the Sennheiser HD800S at $1,700 list. Now, on that list I just read here, the only ones I have not heard are the Sen HD800S. I'm working on it. I'll get there someday. And I have not heard the latest Aria. The one that I heard was the V2. The Stealth Magnet version is out. I haven't heard the Stealth Magnet version, but I hope to soon. Okay. The point is that's a really busy, crowded market context. So any headphone model in that range is going to have to do something to separate itself out and stand out and like attract buyers to it for whatever reason. I don't think. What this one is doing is it's one of the smoother, most relaxed, and definitely has the best mid-range timbre on that list. Okay. And then of course it plays well with mid-fi tube amps, so that can attract people there. So like that's, I think it's niche in that market. Digging a little deeper into comparisons, let's talk about the Eikon, its sibling unit, which is like the closed back version of this. Same driver, just closed back. I reviewed the Eikon last fall of 2020. It's been a while now. My memory of it, and it helps having a review out that you can go back and read to jog the memory a little bit, but my memory of it was that it was very much a specialist, that with like intimate acoustic music, it excelled. Like, it was just amazing at this narrow window of music, but outside of that, it fell off a little bit. And one example that I can think of in particular would be like the 1812 Overture as performed by Eric Kunzel and the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. A lot of information going on in that track there towards the festival overture part at the end. And the Eikon just kind of fell apart. Like it could not hold all of that information together, turned it into a little bit of mush. Spatial presentation collapsed, didn't separate out instruments or vocals from each other that well and all of that. So the Eikon was a specialist, excelled at like more intimate acoustic music, fell off quite a bit outside of that genre. The Auteur is a little bit stronger outside of that wheelhouse. Now, it has the same wheelhouse, I think. More intimate acoustic music because of that excellent mid-range timbre just comes alive. Okay? Sounds wonderful on that. But the Auteur is much stronger than the Eikon outside of that. It held the 1812 Overture together much, much better. Now, I still have heard better at the price point in that regard, but it held it together much better. Okay, and again, I mentioned listening to this in my acclimation phase on the Hugo 2 for a few hours, just playing a shuffled playlist with just all kinds of music genres in it, and I never thought that this one sounded poor. I have heard better for other types of music, but it always sounded good, but still specialized in that more intimate acoustic music there. Now, other comparisons that I have on hand, also an upcoming review for this, but the LCDX 2021 edition, I think has a little bit better treble timbre than the Auteur. It has better low bass extension. This is one of the examples. Again, this is not a bass forward headphone. It's not a bass cannon at all, but it digs down into the depths a little bit more than the Auteur does. Okay, but this one is also much more aggressive, not nearly as smooth, not nearly as relaxed, and it's way behind the Auteur on mid-range timbre. So slightly ahead in treble timbre, way behind in mid-range timbre, I think. I also have recently got in the Focal Clear OG, the original Clear here. This one is noticeably ahead of the Auteur in resolution. Okay, the Auteur is not poor in resolution, but it's not particularly resolving for the price. I think the LCD-X that I just showed was just a tiny bit ahead of the Auteur in overall resolution, but the Clear OG is another noticeable step above in terms of overall resolution and like separating out individual instruments. And like if you have a lot of rapid fire cymbal hits, you can tell like where one hit stops and the other one starts a little more clearly on the Clear OG and all of that. Now, If you saw my clear MG review, which is also recent, I did not like the MG. I think it fell behind in like mid-range resolution. And so Auteur is going to be more resolving than the MG throughout the entire frequency range, but I think it's a little bit behind the clear OG. Okay. Similarly with my Lawton modded Fostex TH900, lots of physicality here. Lots of bass punch and slam, more bass detail, just overall higher resolution here, but still better mid-range timbre and just more relaxed and long-term listenability on the Auteur than on my Fostex TH900 Lawton. Okay, now I don't have it with me here, but the Aria, the V2 Aria, anyway, I have to mention it. Like if spatial presentation is what you are after, you like a big and super accurate soundstage in terms of just razor sharp imaging and separation and all of that. The Aria, at least the V2, have not heard the stealth version, but the Aria V2 is going to be way ahead of this, and also ahead of everything else that I just showed you here at this price point. So. Again, and I have not heard the HD 800S yet, but I'm going to get to it. So, like, in that market context, this is one of the more relaxed and smooth models. Definitely has the best mid-range timbre to my ear. Not the most resolving, doesn't have the most bass extension and all of that. Okay, but it does carve out a spot for itself with its smooth and relaxed presentation and its wonderful mid-range timbre, and the fact that it's one of the fewer options at the price point that plays nice with mid-fi, middle-of-the-road tube amps, particularly OTLs, because of that 300 ohm impedance. Okay, so there it is. I think that fairly well sums it up. There is my ZMF Auteur review. Be on the lookout for upcoming reviews soon of the Clear MG, of the 2021 edition of the LCDX. I have a Susvara over my shoulder. I don't know if you can see it there, but that's coming up soon, as well as Focal Elex, and well, that should be enough to whet your appetite for the time being. So I am Wave Theory. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and until next time, enjoy the music.